quick pointers in regards to why diversifying what's surrounding you is very important, really quick.
I think as one of the things that we started off saying is, you know, identify where it is you're trying to get to, and also identify areas where you need help. I have a mentor who is not even in banking. Matter of fact, she's in Dallas at Microsoft and has a team of about 175 folks that she's responsible for. But I reached out to her because she's able to motivate a group of young folks and get them to follow her. They will follow her over the edge if she took them there. And I wanted to know, what is it, how do you motivate them? But for me, it was setting aside, you know, her background, my background, gender and ethnicity. She had something that I saw as a resource and as value. So for me, my recommendation would be, you know, if you talk to someone long enough, as I said earlier, you'll find out you do have something in common with them. So let down your guards and be open to reaching out to someone who may not look like you, someone who's in a totally different industry than you, but you see that there's a commonality somewhere in terms of what they're doing career-wise and what you're doing. So in this day and age, as we talk about global, let your thought process be global and step outside of your comfort zone.
Thank you, sir. I loved your comment, Kathy. Who's studying you? And there are people watching you that are emulating you, that are looking up to you throughout the community, throughout your job, that you don't even know about. But more importantly, who are you studying? And Elizabeth is right. You need a diverse, eclectic set of interactions in your business and your personal life, because it will only help you grow. Old, young, Black, white, Hispanic, Asian, people that speak a different language, people that eat different kinds of food, you need to go experience that. When I moved to Austin, I was in finance sector marketing for IBM. 16% of Americans had a passport that was valid. That was embarrassing to me. 16% of us traveled outside the borders. After 9/11, the number moved up to a whopping 28%. And that was because Canada, Mexico, and parts of the Caribbean required it. We don't travel enough. We don't expose ourselves globally. So if you travel at all, owe yourself a trip and build support around the world. You are competing with a global labor force. And you've got to think of yourself as a global citizen. So I think it's important that you study more people. And can you make a list right now of how many people you know that speak a different language than you? Especially if you don't have a second language skill. And how many countries you've traveled to. And how many people you can connect with on Skype that don't originate from the United States. I'm not talking about expats that are over there on assignment. I'm talking about true relationships that are global. That's going to make you more competitive. And if you can't say, please, thank you, I'm lost, help me, in another language, and at least 3 or 4, then start now. That's the best advice I can give you at your career position. You have got to be global, and you've got to be a global citizen. And you've got to study other cultures. The whole world is watching us. Believe you me, I have traveled all over these United States. And all of them want to know, and do know, because CNN International leads with what's happening in the US, then the UK, and then the rest of the world. So you're our ambassadors, you're our future. You've got to think of yourselves that way. So who are you studying? Who's studying you? How valid is your passport? Where's your next trip? And you'll find that it's not as expensive to go to Costa Rica as it is to fly to New York from Austin, Texas.
I couldn't agree more. The only thing I'll add is travel, 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 and get outside of the lower 48 and actually go back to school if you need to do it to develop a second language and be very fluent in that second language at a minimum. And I think that would be one of the most resourceful things you could do today. And make sure that you learn from it. And also this, I'll just add one other thing. In your travels, make sure you take the opportunity to try to do your work-life balance. Try to enjoy yourself and have some fun. You can't work 365, 24/7. Even I had to find out I've been a CEO twice. That I actually had to take a little time and put these aside in the safe for at least a couple of days if you could get away with it. Because there's something about enjoying yourself as part of your ascension until high-level opportunities with your respective companies, or whether or not you want to become future entrepreneurs. Try to have some fun in your life also.
If we could take this one last question and have one panelist address it, and we'll move forward.
How y'all doing? I'm Brandon Woodson at Houston Tillerson University, Communications and Minor in Religious Studies. My personal question, what is your philosophy, meaning wisdom, do you use to obtain and utilize business acumen?
Who wants to go for that one?
You guys are retired, so I'll let one of the retirees.
That sounds like a Merlin question to me.
Talk about passing the buck. My philosophy, I'm glad to hear that you have a mixed study, because the religious foundation will carry you through. And I'm not proposing any one religion or faith-based organization over another, but my business ethic was established because of my Christian upbringing. I'll never forget singing Christmas carols, and my father would say, "Be good for goodness sake. Ho, 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 Merry Christmas. Don't do it so Santa Claus is going to come and give you a gift. But be the person you are because of your own moral compass." And a lot of us haven't even assessed what we really fundamentally, foundationally believe in. Now, I was participating in a Saturday event that the Black MBAs had, and right before I spoke, they had a values clarification session where they have all of these descriptors on a piece of paper, and they asked the attendees, and I thought it was excellent, to circle 14 that describe you. Then he came back in 3 minutes and said, "Now circle 7 that describe you. Now mark the 7 down," and he walked them down till you have 5 seconds to pick the one word on this page that most describes you. And once you really know the essence, the core of who you are, you need to, I think, establish employment or your own business based on that core value. And that's the real metric. Mine happens to come from Baptist, church, religious upbringing. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. 10 Commandments, very fundamental. But I've studied other religions. And basically it's the same fundamental core value, the essence of humankind. How do we exist and survive? So I say what my great-grandmother used to say, treat company like family and treat family like company, and you'll be successful. Thank you for the question.
Well, I think this has been a very enlightening dialogue, and I hope all of you agree. Relationships are key to our success, and I challenge all of us to continue to meet that challenge and step up our game in relationship building. So join me to thank Marilyn, Kathy, and Milton for sharing their direction, clarity, and encouragement with us this morning. So that will conclude our breakfast keynote. If you would take a look at your program in front of you, it will give you instructions for the following activity. So thank you and good morning again.
Had some refreshments, some beverages, lots of good food. I heard lunch is going to be even better. So let's try that again. Good morning, Leadership Empowerment Institute. Nicely done. All right, my name is Autumn Caviness, and I am the Assistant Director of the WEB Du Bois Honors Program at Houston Tillerson University. And I'm very excited. We have an incredible panel this morning. I'm calling these two gentlemen to my left the dynamic duo of globalization. all right? So work with me on this. And what we're going to talk about today is how to stay relevant in a global world. And what that really is looking at is how do you use education, experience to enhance what is your global understanding. So I'm not big on a lot of pomp and circumstance, I'm going to be honest. But we're going to do a quick bio because, again, I have to do this dynamic duo justice. All right, to my immediate left is Dr. Audrey Leroy Mackey. Everybody clap for Dr. Mackey this morning. Dr. Mackey knows Austin, Central Texas, the Texas region, like no one else in this room. He graduated from Anderson High School, graduated from Houston-Tillotson, also graduated from the University of Texas, and has been with the Austin Community College System since August 1976. All right, so this man definitely knows about globalization, how the changing face and demographics of what's transpiring in the state is also moving and trending outwards as well. The man who is to the left of Dr. Mackey is Dr. Les W. Carter. Everyone clap for Dr. Carter this morning. Dr. Carter is a director of global business programs at St. Edward's University. This man goes places, travel places. I bet his passport is full of thousands of stamps. So we have a lot in terms of what's going on abroad and what's here in terms of globalization. So what I want to talk about with our panelists today is, we've done our welcome. Thank you again for being here. Our panel has a lot of relevance because globalization is one of those buzzwords. And how we want to make this relevant to each and every one of you in this room is why I know you can't be all things to all people, but we're going to try, because we're going to touch on undergraduate experience in terms of globalization, graduate experiences, and what you can do in your professional career for those of you who have already done the aforementioned. We're also going to go through 2 terms of art because we need to be on the same page in order to discuss where we're going. Then we're going to do a quick moderator question and answer, some things that we've come up with as a panel, and then I'm going to give it over to you, our incredible audience. So let's go ahead and talk about 2 terms of art. Globalization. What exactly does that mean? And I'm going to turn to you, Dr. Carter. What is that? What is globalization?
I think your slide is up, and it's a pretty good start for a definition, although I think it's more than what it represents. It is a process. It's a process of understanding what it takes to be a global person, to be a global citizen, to be a global company. You have to step back and spend some time trying to analyze what it means to you and your company if you're trying to operate in a different environment. And what that process is can take you through a variety of things, which usually starts with basic research about the country, its culture, its politics, its economics, and how they relate to what you are and what you are wanting to do in that country. So this is a good beginning.
Okay. Dr. Mackey, do you have anything that you would like to add to his definition?
Just a comment about globalization from the educational perspective. Requirement here is that one needs to be aware of educational trends, informational streams, and how the information stream flows and applies from one culture to another, and how to accumulate, or rather take advantage of those informational streams and apply them to the directions that are most immediate in your particular setting.
Thank you. Now that we have an idea of what globalization is, it's very important that we're working from a similar paradigm. Let's talk a little bit more about globalization competence. Now the slide says it's the state or quality of being adequately or well qualified. It's an ability. But Dr. Carter, how does globalization competence work for what you do at St. Ed's? What is it, and how do you utilize that concept in your teaching paradigm?
At St. Ed's, we've tried to launch a new initiative, one of our strategic initiatives from the president of the university over the next 5 years, to have our students prepared to enter the global environment and to be able to interact with it in a meaningful way. To be competent, I do believe that you have to do many things. And in my education process of the students that I teach at the graduate and undergraduate level, We integrate 2 major items, and then hope they take it to the next step, and I'll describe those. We go to the classroom, and we teach them about globalization, we teach them about global activities, international finance, international marketing, traditional type business courses related to the international or global environment. In addition to that, we take students on a 1-week to 10-day trip to a foreign country. And the purpose of doing that is to hopefully give them an inkling, a beginning understanding of what it's like back to the culture, the economics, and the politics of that country, to see if they have an interest in pursuing a global career. And we have designated 3 major areas of the world, not too scientific here, but I'll make it sound that way. Three general areas of the world: Asia, the Americas, and Europe, where we believe that our students have the greatest opportunity for employment after graduation if they choose to be global. So we will, on an annual basis, spring, summer, and fall, rotate a trip to a country in one of those destinations. The second component of that is, after the beginning, we have partnership universities that we are aligned with in those countries, that we hope if a student has a particular interest in China, for example, that they will take the Chinese language, learn to speak the language, and then they will go to a university that we have a partnership with in China for a semester or longer. In certain countries, we have dual and joint degrees where a student can graduate from a university in France and get a degree from that university and get a degree from St. Edward's, so that they will have 2 degrees representing that they understand a little bit more about the global environment than someone who just went on a 1-week trip with me.
Thank you. Dr. Mackey?
For me, teaching laboratory science courses, it was necessary for me to make a rather dramatic paradigm shift in the way I approached the teaching of my students and preparing them for the global world that we saw ourselves faced with, particularly with the emergence of technology, the World Wide Web, the communication potentials that were brought into place by those technologies. And my having been a typewriter astute individual, had to not only change my approach to teaching, I had to learn the technologies, and then I had to become familiar with how to apply those technologies. In the laboratory sciences, there emerged the potential for incorporating different curriculum delivery methods where we use technology to teach the theoreticals, and then we moved from there to use technology in teaching the laboratory components of these courses. The requirement is that the challenge is rather to enable students to manage those approaches, the technological approach, manage the theoretical approach, then sort of marry those approaches together, infuse the concepts and apply those concepts using the technologies that's available, then communicating, searching for variations and searching for different factors that may have an impact on outcomes, particularly in the laboratory science setting, or the lab component of those courses.
Thank you. Now that we're all on similar templates when it comes to what is globalization and what is globalization competence, let's put this in action, all right? So I thought this was really interesting and very timely. So less than 48 hours ago, President Obama was in New Orleans and he was delivering his remarks at the National Urban League Convention. And I'm not going to read the entire quote to you, all right? But I will say what was really great and what I've bolded and enlarged is that he spoke of that every child, specifically for African Americans, has greater access to a complete and competitive education from the time they're born all the way through the time that they get a career. And so I want to, of course, talk to our dynamic duo and ask you, what is a complete and competitive education right now for an undergrad or graduate student, and how does globalization factor into that?
I have a strong bias that at the undergraduate level, if I can just do college, I'm not an expert at middle school or high school, I can tell you that, but I'm not even an expert at college and graduate school, even though I've been doing it for the last 13 years. It seems to me that to be a well-rounded student, students have to have a background, and I strongly support a liberal arts background that blends lots of opportunity, English, science, math, to help you understand a lot of things that are going on around you. And then from that point, pursue something that is of great interest to you, whether it's business, whether it's science, whether it's psychology, so that you have a foundation that makes you an interesting person to be around. The well-rounded education where you can write and speak well is critical to your success in the business world. So I strongly support the Liberal Arts Foundation, and founded and followed by whatever particular interest you have as an individual. How we get there, obviously universities, colleges, private or public, are very expensive. There needs to be more assistance out there for many of us who receive scholarships of some sort to be able to attend universities and colleges. And where it comes from private industry, it comes from individuals, it comes from former students, and it has to come some from the government. So all of those have to come together to allow it to be an affordable opportunity with a strong basis in what I'll call liberal arts, and then followed by your dream for your career.
And Dr. Mackey, I'm interested in your perspective as well, because ACC is very big about how many students are enrolled in this? 45,000?
Right, about 42,000 now.
All right, and the goal is to move on a lot of times to the next level. So what is being taught in terms of a complete and competitive education? How do you feel?
First off, I think that in order for an educational experience to be complete, there has to be the resources available to make meet the demands, whether it be logistical demands, whether it be equipment, faculty, staff, retaining qualified faculty, being able to compensate them well, so that the next tier can be realized. That second tier is providing the students with those experiences that they will need in order to make them competitive. The primary skill I see is, in addition to mastering the curriculum content, being able to engage in analytical thinking, the critical thinking skills. This particular area not always gets addressed in the educational domain, because we tend to get so caught up in content that we tend to stray away from providing those challenging situations where we require students to think and to analyze situations and to prepare them to move to that next stage of next wave of research and development teams that we're going to need as we move into the future and further out into the global stream.
All right, thank you. And I'm going to go ahead and advance us a slide, because I really want to get to something, especially for those of you who are undergrads or grads right now, because it's something that's very pertinent and relevant to where you are in your respective career frame. So 53% of recent college grads are jobless or underemployed. And that came out from the AP about second quarter, and the internet, you have to forgive me, I'm going to do, of course, one grad quote. The internet went nuts, courtesy of Paul Wall. And people said, well, what's going on? What's happening here? And I'm curious, what makes a difference? You guys come across a lot of undergrads, a lot of grad students. What's the difference, the game changer for those who actually find a job versus who do not, coming right out of undergrad?
That's an interesting question. I think part of the issue involves the experiences that students encounter during the advisory stage as they're trying to make a determination as to what they want to do once they've finished their educational experience. A good advisory staff to direct the students into productive academic pursuit, an academic program that will lead them into areas of employment. Also, certain areas, in certain areas, there are more employment opportunities. For the students that I teach, this is not a problem. Employment is not a problem because the majority of these students are going into healthcare careers, various aspects of healthcare, and there's tremendous demand here. Once they finish their programs, they're into the employment arena. For other programs, really, for me, it's difficult to sit and come up with a formula that'll provide an insight into how to best prepare these students to overcome that particular hurdle. I've sort of lapsed into a comfort zone because I know that my students, once they leave, they're probably inadequately prepared. They'll be able to pass those assessment tests, the state standardized tests and so forth. They'll be able to get their certifications. They'll be able to get jobs. So my challenge and my focus is to make sure that those skills that they need to go forward, complete those courses they need to take after they leave my classroom, and then be able to have skills that will enable them to pass the standardized tests.
Dr. Carter, your thoughts?
I totally agree with that, certain careers, certain job opportunities are going to be there no matter what, and the selection process of what you choose to do is a real challenge. And the college education, university education process is 4 years or longer. It was longer for my twin sons.
That's the A&M experience.
By their own choice, and unfortunately I was financially able to afford it at the time, but I'm still paying for it. But on to more important things. So the choices that you make, in their particular case, this is why I brought them up, they changed majors twice, trying to figure out where they were going to fit best in the world, and they both chose something that they did not end up doing. Then they returned to school again and got an MBA, and then are successful as a result of that degree. So many students, you choose for your major for a lot of reasons. So I agree with Dr. Mackey. The counselor at the beginning is also critical of what do you want to be when you grow up. Let's get you oriented so that you can be flexible when the time comes. My degrees are in finance. I know a little bit about economics, but I cannot tell you what the stock market is going to do today, and I sure can't tell you what the economy is going to do in 4 to 6 years. I don't know anyone who can accurately predict either of those things. If there were someone, that person would be the richest person or the richest entity in the world. So how can we expect our young men and women entering school to pick the right career for themselves? I certainly did not pick the right career for myself. I was a psychology major. I am not practicing psychology, I assure you. So I think in the beginning it is a challenge, and because of the way businesses operate today, there is so much information available to them, they are pinpointing, I want someone who looks like this, has taken these specific courses, has this many years of experience, and no one else, and everyone else gets screened out. Our young college graduates in a period of unemployment, like we're facing now globally, are having a struggle to find a job anywhere because they have limited experience. So we have experience, we have the entry, we have the exit, and we have the timing issue. It combines to make a very difficult thing for students in a down economic time. In an up economic time, everybody hires everybody, but not so right now. I don't know if you're going to ask this question, but I'm going to give an answer, and maybe this is a takeaway. You need to distinguish yourselves somehow with your experience, with who you are, with how you present yourselves. And that goes back to one of the, I agree with totally with Dr. Mackey about critical thinking is one of the essential things that we all try to do in our, I don't know all, but at least two of us try to do in our teaching for our students. We demand it, that you learn how to think critically, to analyze the situation, and to make the best recommendations based on solid factual research and assumptions, if you lack facts, that are solid, to be able to come to a conclusion, whether it's in science or whether it's in business. Now, if you can distinguish yourself somehow that way, like being able to clearly communicate that you have a mental thought process that helps you do that in your job interviews, if you can demonstrate that and tell someone that this is what you have done, whether it's something simple in a fraternity or a sorority, that you analyzed a process because that's the experience that you have, you bring a tool to the table that your competitor, the person sitting next to you right now, doesn't have. And display it and tell them, this is who I am and this is what I can do.
No, that's a perfect segue. Did you want to add something?
Well, I just wanted to add also that as the advisor's role necessitates that those individuals be knowledgeable about the selection criteria that at play at a particular time, because there's always going to be some commonalities. Various job settings will have some certain commonalities as far as selection criteria are concerned. As these criteria change, then the advisors need to be knowledgeable of those changes and advising the students keep in mind that the changes, the conditions that exist at a particular time may shift to in another direction. So this puts on the head of the advisor the hat of being a sort of fortune teller and make some predictions about where the global climate is going to take these requirements and conditions in the future. Sort of taking a futuristic approach in that regard.
And Dr. Carter, you gave us a really great segue in terms of how to distinguish and differentiate yourself in terms of competition. So I'm curious, a lot of times we look at competition and we're competing for jobs and we're getting out of school, or even we're in our professional lives. In terms of a global market, is the competition for your students, the students in LA or the students in Lake Charles or New York City, or is it the students globally? How does that play out for your students, Dr. Carter?
I'm going to answer globally, and I'll give you more than that. When I travel, I usually take somewhere between 10 and 12 trips to foreign countries on a yearly basis. Half of those are with students, and half of those are planning for the next trip I'm going to take the following year with students. And we always visit universities at other locations. I'm always amazed, you know, there's an old joke, what do you call someone who speaks 3 languages trilingual? What is someone who speaks 2 languages that bilingual? And what's someone who speaks 1 language? That's called an American. And unfortunately, I find that that is true in most of the countries that I go to. From our perspective. From their perspective, they may speak up to 5 languages if I go to Europe, fluently. That's your competition, because the United States offers the best education program in the world, in my opinion. There are some schools that have higher rankings that you can look at in U.S. News and World Report and Princeton Review. However, foreigners, and we'll call them foreigners, people from different countries than the United States, come to America for education because it is renowned for its quality and its deliverables and what we demand of the students to be able to do at the end of their education period. So your competition is going to be, if it's not already, people who have come to the United States, gotten their education, And now they speak multiple languages and they can go anywhere in the world. So my encouragement is, much as you may hate to learn Spanish or French or German or Chinese, try to pick up a foreign language. I will tell you, I'm really good at French. My Spanish is adequate, but I didn't start speaking Spanish until a year ago, and I struggle. I'm still struggling with it because French and Spanish get mixed up in my head. The file cabinets aren't separated enough, but even an old person can learn a foreign language. So I encourage you, if you wanted to challenge yourself, pick up a foreign language while you can, and do that in your leisure as a fun thing to do, rather than perhaps playing beach volleyball for a few days a week.
Dr. Mackey, any thoughts on that?
I think the opportunities that are offered by different curriculum delivery processes important to give consideration to as well. We are not restricted to the structured classroom, campus classroom settings that we experienced during our education and early education and in later years as well. So you have distance learning programs that are important and provide opportunities for you to broaden your horizons and to learn different skills and expand your skills. And I think taking advantage of these opportunities is something that we need to be more aware of, and we need to encourage our learners to consider as a way to meet their educational goals and improve themselves, make themselves more marketable in the job place.
Now, as I mentioned at the beginning of our panel, we're doing our best to hit what might happen for those who are undergrads, grads, and those now in their professional lives. And so I want to talk a little bit about how does a professional, so someone who has done what they need in terms of the education from the undergrad to the grad perspective, how does that professional stay relevant in a global world? And if they're maybe not so relevant, any ideas as how they can possibly retrofit their professional career in order to become relevant?
Let me do the retrofit first, and then I'll go back for if you don't want to go back to school. If you haven't pursued an advanced degree, I might suggest that you consider one that would take you into the global environment. Whether it's global business, global entrepreneurship, international business, whatever it's called, that would be one, and I think probably the primary focus that I think I might recommend to someone if they wanted to retrofit themselves and become global. They could also pursue seminars. Various universities and also various associations have seminars and certifications that you can get that would allow you to be more global, perhaps in accounting, more global accounting processes, for example, that would get you a certification that would move you in a different direction than you're in now. For those of you that are less inclined to go back and do further education, I would encourage you, because, as Dr. Mackey said, the internet is everywhere. It's in everyone's pocket right now, or in your purse. And you can look up anything you want to look up. And you can become very informed immediately. So where do you look? Where do you look? If you want to know what's going on in different countries, the Department of State has a lot of useful information. And the CIA has an excellent website. It's called a fact book on every country in the world. There's about 184 countries that are recognized, that are significant, and between the State Department and the CIA. And the only trouble is that once you open the CIA website, you're in their data file. No, it's okay. They haven't come to visit. But it gives you tons of information about the basics of every country, major country in the world. I would also pick up my reading. The Austin American Statesman's fine for Austin information. If you want to read a little bit about business, the Wall Street Journal for the Nation is very good. It also has a little bit of global. But I would persuade you to look at the Financial Times, which comes out of London. It's a funny-looking pink paper. If anyone reads it, sees you with it, they know exactly what it is. It's the only pink newspaper out there. But it gives you an entirely different perspective. I also read another magazine. I thought about this one. My son got this one for me. It looks like a comic book. It's called The Week. The Week. And it's a summary of activities that happened this past week, but it's given from different perspectives. So if we pick the Chicago Tribune and the New York Times and said that's a liberal-leaning newspaper, and the Wall Street Journal is a conservative newspaper, well, the Week will pick up articles from the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, Chicago Tribune, the LA Times, and give you a different perspective of the same issue. So now it's opened up your eyes, because normally we read only what we want to read. I like reading Wall Street Journal and Financial Times. If you give me the New York Times, I kind of set it aside because I don't have enough time to read the whole thing. But the Week, I can read that. And it helps me to understand what's going on in the world, looking at different perspectives. What other people think of us outside of the United States is not something that we normally look at. Financial Times will give it to you point blank, in your face, and tell you exactly what they think. There's no end ifs or buts about it, and it's kind of shocking the first time you read it. Because everybody doesn't think that we are perfect. And they will tell you that. So I would look at resources that can allow you to read, continue your networking, and try to pick out people who are global. Go to your old professors. And most of us are older, and we do like talking to you and telling you what we're doing and what we're seeing. We find it very interesting. It's rewarding to hear from me, to personally hear from my former students. It's something that, one of the things that drives me is to find out they've done well. And now they're asking me another question about how to do better. So use us as a resource. It's free, and we like doing it. I do, very much. And I guess also look at your network of former friends from your educational process who have gone on to do different things in different locations. Those may be some of your best resources, because if they were good friends when they were in school, they'll continue to be good friends, and they will tell you, hey, I know somebody that you might want to talk to about whatever the subject is.
All right. In about 3 minutes, we're going to go to your question and answer, but I have a special question that I'm going to ask you, Dr. Mackey. Take us a little bit off of the detour. But what I want to think and ask you about is, you're coming out of high school, you're coming out of Anderson, 2012. Now you have upgraded from being typewriter, technologically savvy, to you know everything. You can even program and create your own mobile apps. How would you prepare, knowing what you know from your time and your tenure at ACC, how would you prepare for the globalization of today's workforce? So what would you do?
Initially, make a decision as to what I wanted to pursue as a career, in the way of a career, what kinds of skills would I need. I could resort to the internet to get some ideas about skill requirements. Based on what I find there, make some decisions about the coursework that I need to take. Then I would find somebody else to talk to. I would find someone who could give me some face-to-face input and insight into how I might move forward toward achieving my goals. I like the community college setting for a number of reasons, several reasons, for students who are just out of high school. The community college setting gives these people, these young people, an opportunity to be in classrooms populated by individuals who are older, by non-traditional students, individuals who have been out of high school for several years and decided to come back and qualify themselves for the workforce. And then very importantly, there'll be those individuals who are coming back for the purpose of retrofitting, who've been out in the global domain, who've been engaged, who've been employed, who have found themselves needing to requalify, needing to prepare for other job sites, other job settings. And this is an excellent environment for a young individual just out of high school who's willing to take the time to interface with the resources, individuals in the form of individuals who have had a broader range of experiences, that these young individuals can draw from. So I would sit and talk with those persons and take advantage of what they would be able to provide me with in the way of direction and insight based on their experiences, and thereby get a greater feel for what the global world is really like, and what I'm going to have to do in order to survive in that climate.
Nice. Now let's go ahead and take some questions. You see the two microphones there on the left and the right. And this is your time. Like I said, the experience of this panel truly runs the gamut. So please, if you have any questions about globalization, about perhaps your own job search, or perhaps where you are and how to retrofit your own job, I encourage you to ask the question. Does anyone have anything for us? All right. And of course I had to bring my slide. You know, I'm gonna let you finish, so I know it's gonna be a good question, all right? And what is your name?
Carlos, I need microphone.
Yeah, we can hear you. Use your outside voice.
Right now I'm a student at work, also work in student government at ACC, and I always try to learn new skills to advance myself. And you see that can be very time consuming. What is a suggestion for me to advance to the next level for time management wise? How can I balance that out and learn how to create more time for myself to do some of the stuff you mentioned today?
Time management, and you're at ACC, and your question comes as a familiar sound to me. I hear it all the time. How do I find more time? I just don't have enough time to meet the requirements that are in place for this particular course. How can I be successful? It really boils down to a matter of being able to decide on priorities and to make adjustments in lifestyle. You're juggling a number of things. You're juggling an employment setting. You have other commitments associated with your daily life needs, and then you have the academic component as well. Select your courses such that you don't overload yourself. Realize what your potential is. Once you identify those priorities, then don't overextend beyond what your capabilities allow you to do. I hope that helps.
Dr. Carter, any
The
suggestions?
only thing I would add to that is learn to say no. I can't do that because I've got my priorities, just like Dr. Mackey said, all lined up. When I come to you and say, I've got one more thing for you, say, I can't do that. It's okay. It's okay to say no.
And that's such a good thing to think about. Was it hard for you to learn that, Dr. Carter, to be able to just say no?
I'm the worst at not saying no.
Still.
I suffer for it. So I always tell other people, don't do as I say, please. I mean, don't do as I do. Please do. Learn to say no.
Notice how they say no, say no.
And they always, and there's an old adage, if you want something to get done, give it to a busy person. And it happens. But you have to say no. And really, until recently, I've said no a few times recently. So start early. Don't wait till you get to my age.
Our age.
Yes, ma'am.
age. Hi, Dr. Carter. My name is Ivory Tate. I'm with Farm Credit Bank, so I'm in the second half of my life's career. You made very good points about learning a second language, and I recognize the significance of needing to do that, and have stopped and started 2 or 3 times. I'd love to hear your advice on someone who, in their mature career, has decided to learn a second language, and what you think will help make that most successful.
I'll tell you what I did for the Spanish, and at this point I've done Rosetta Stone, and I did another software program called Mango, so I could do them at home, and that worked out okay. I can communicate generally. In Chile, I have a tough time because it's full of colloquialisms that I can't catch, and it goes way too fast for me. So I am in the mode now to find an adult education program that I can sign up for and take in the evening. So if you're struggling and you want to at least try, I would recommend an easy way to get into it is to do it at home with one of these two, a program like that, where you speak and it feeds back to you. And you'll learn the basics of it, you'll learn how to speak, but then you need someone else to help you, and that's where I'm at now. And also, then the most important thing is to travel to a country, to a destination where they speak the language, so that you're really challenged and forced into an environment. I just came back from France with a group of students and found out that we were not going to have a translator with us. So we got on the bus, and I was the translator. And surprisingly, we got everywhere we needed to go with all the students and did everything we needed to do. And we weren't in Paris where everybody speaks English. We were in small towns outside of Paris, 5 hours outside of Paris. So you can get along, and you need to be forced into it sometimes. And that's happened to me in Costa Rica and in Chile. The Spanish was tough. We didn't get lost, thank goodness. So that's my advice.
Hi, just a quick question. Now we live in a global economy where you deal with so many people from different countries. What is your advice on the professionals definitely understanding, building relationships with people from other countries, and especially the cultural aspect of it, so that you can actually understand and do business with them properly.
Relationship building, cross-cultural.
Relationship building, and definitely on the, especially can you talk a little bit about the cultural aspect of that?
This is how we've done it. Now, from the perspective of a professional and someone now trying to do that, you need to find the local, we'll call it the legations, or the local offices that have foreign representatives here, that have foreign businesses here. And I would approach that and try to get in whatever networking environment they use, and learn to speak to them, to learn about what's going on in their country. If you have the opportunity to take a class, and this is how we approach it, we travel to the country and we meet, we do a lot of things while we're there. We're not just sightseeing. We do sightsee because we want them to understand the culture, and we want them to see the history, and so we go to museums and art galleries and things like that. But we also go see businesses, and we go see the universities there that we have a relationship with, and we usually have what's called a third-party service provider, like a company called International Studies Abroad, that have representatives in those countries. All of our students get to meet all of these people. So they have built a brand new network if they choose to pursue it from an educational standpoint or from a professional standpoint. Because there is also, in most countries, there's an American Chamber of Commerce. This would be an ideal way for you to learn what American businesses are. The idea of the American Chamber of Commerce in Chile, for example, is to attract American businesses to Chile. There's one in France, there's one in Germany. They're all, not all over, but in most countries of the world, there's an American Chamber of Commerce that you can find out about businesses through them that are trying to do businesses there. It would help you begin to build a network around the world.
Dr. Mackey, do you want to add anything?
just to emphasize the importance of networking, and that is the key approach, as Dr. Carter's pointed out, to finding sources of information and threads of information about cultures and businesses and the business opportunities and technological advances and those sorts of things. Just getting into a good network stream is where you need to be.
All right. So as we conclude, I just want to ask both Dr. Mackey and Dr. Carter, what is your one takeaway for how to stay relevant in a global world? Dr. Carter, we'll start with you.
This one's long,
Okay.
so I'm not sure it's one.
Charles Dickens takeaway. That's fine.
This goes back to critical thinking. I would encourage you all to be able to, I hope you have at this point developed the critical thinking skills so that you can identify the relevant factors in a crisis. Every company has crises. Every individual has crises. What are the critical factors that you're looking at? If there's a crisis, that means there's an opportunity. Can you identify the opportunity related to the crisis? Develop alternative courses of action. Make a decision, and then recommend the implementation. Those are all steps that you should be able to take as business people, as individuals with your lives. So it goes back to critical thinking, doing the research, analyzing it, making a recommendation. If you can do that, you will distinguish yourself in a global environment. You will distinguish yourself personally. It will make you a happier person as you face the number of crises that you're going to run into throughout your life.
Dr. Mackey?
I would say the first thing you want to do is ask yourself the question, where do I want to fit on the global stage? How do I find a niche for myself that I'll be comfortable with, that I'll find to be productive and to give reward and meaning to my life? Once you ask that question, then you can look at avenues to follow in order to make the answer that you generate to the question a reality. If you don't ask that question, no matter what you do, no matter where you might find yourself, what settings you might find yourself in, the reward's not going to be as wholesome as they would otherwise.
I tell you, we have an incredible duo. Did I not say this would be a good panel? So we've learned everything from the week, from pink newspapers to what you need to do in terms of being able to retrofit your career. I hope that you have enjoyed our take on how to stay relevant in a global world. And what I need right now is for you to go ahead and clap and applause for Dr. Carter and Dr. Mackey. Contact information is on the screen. Gentlemen will be available afterwards for any questions. All right, the next panel coming up is Know the Rules, but Play Your Own Game. Thank you. Have a good morning.